I am slightly worried about the future of Crash. Why? Let's find out. What's up guys, Canadian Guy A here, and I am back with a video that is inevitably going to be taken 100% the wrong way, and people will scream at me at the top of their lungs and hate me. But here we go anyway, because I am a firm believer in speaking my mind, even if people may hate me afterwards. Before I even start, I need to say that I love Crash Bandicoot. I loved the original trilogy. I have the first 4 figures PVC statue, and my hype levels for Crash Team Racing are through the roof. But even though I love Crash and all its charm, its future kind of scares me a little bit. But why? Let me explain a few things first before I make my statement, because if I outright say it, people will go to the comment section before the video is even done and tack away at the keyboard about how stupid I am. See, the original Crash games were incredibly linear. Run from point A to point B to point C and finish the level in 3D, but not really 3D space. The camera is on an axis and moves on the rails with Crash. Now, the Insane Trilogy was a great remake, but we would be fooling ourselves if the game didn't push on our nostalgia levels. Nostalgia is both a great, powerful, and yet crazy destructive force. Nostalgia can take something that looks horrid and make it look great in the mind, and likewise, take something that looks great and make it look horrid in the mind again. Nostalgia creates a passion for a game and makes the person who has said nostalgia towards these products feel as though they are a connoisseur of said product. I need to make an entire video talking about my thoughts on nostalgia, but many others have and talked about the positives and negatives it can have on people. I'll bring this point back later as it is relevant to what I have to say. So like I said before, we would be fooling ourselves if we didn't say that Crash Bandicoot the Insane Trilogy didn't play on our nostalgia. So my question is, if Crash Bandicoot had never come out before and they released the Insane Trilogy, would it have done as well as it did in today's market? Would it have been successful? Would it have sold about 5 million units and get an 80 on Metacritic? I honestly don't think it would have, because of the old formula it follows. Here's why I am worried about Crash's future. Its formula is old. The game lacks innovation from today's perspective. Of course, if we were to put on the rose-tinted goggles and look at the time when it came out, the game was a revolution for its time. But, like the wooden wagon wheel, just because it worked and was incredibly great for its time, it doesn't mean that it can be used and requested for in today's market and age. The formula it used would need to be updated and changed for today's market, as people expect more and more from game experiences nowadays. What I mean is, people are asking for Crash Bandicoot, but not for its original formula. Of course, I'm not saying that it's impossible to update Crash and try to improve on its core gameplay, but this is where that nostalgia rule comes in that I was talking about earlier. See, some fans bitten by the nostalgia bug might see the word change or alteration and they get upset. They get mad and don't want changes to happen to the core gameplay of their franchise. They see nothing or very little wrong with the formula that they've grown up to love and are familiar with, because they were children when they played these games and have fell in love with it, but also have come blind to it. Change is seen as negative right away and not given a chance because they feel the formula does not require any changes. So this is where the problems lie. There is an impasse. Crash's formula is old and requires updating and tuning up for a brand new game. It also calls for more of an expandable type of gameplay, because the core platforming is great, but it needs more. However, a lot of fans may not want it updated. This is a conflict between developer and gamer. Now, some of you may feel, nah Canadian, you're dumb, that won't happen. And this is where I turn back to the monster we created called nostalgia and see the predicament we put ourselves in. Take a look at past posts of both Crash's and Spyro's development leading up to both of their remasters. People going to war over such things like the shade of grass on Insanity Beach, or the lighter shade of purple on Spyro, or the many other fiascos of fans having meltdowns over the smallest changes in these games. And this was before the game had even come out, or before anyone had actually gotten their hands on it and played them. Change was seen as a negative a lot of times. Now, before people get offended by what I am saying, I understand critiques and slight changes, those are okay to suggest. And I am also not saying that every fan is like this. And I also understand that people say that it was like that because it was a remaster plus of the original games. But still, to see that kind of reaction due to small changes is still very worrisome. If a small change like a shade of grass being adjusted makes people upset, what would happen when something like a core piece of gameplay is changed? How widespread of a problem would that be? Let's take a look at one of Crash's other releases that he has a cult following for, but made changes to the core gameplay, and that is Crash Twinsanity. Crash Twinsanity tried to expand and change the Crash formula by making it more open in 3D.
Hey! Yeah, you! I've been doing this for 10 stinking years! Back and forward, and I'm sick of it! Well, I'm not gonna do it no more!
Though many people go to my comment section asking for Twinsanity to possibly make a comeback, or a Crash game in the realm of Twinsanity, the sales for that game were, at best, abysmal. According to VG charts, the game sold less than 1 million copies, about 790,000 units, and scored a whopping meh on Metacritic, hitting a score of 64. The game could not even get past the 1 million threshold on both PlayStation and Xbox combined. This game was not the only game, however, that seemed to befall negativity on Crash Bandicoot. Other than Mind Over Mutant, that came out on 6 consoles, no other home console Crash game broke 1 million units sold after Wrath of Cortex for the PlayStation 2, which all tried to do something different and add on to the current Crash formula. I also asked what your guys' thoughts were on Twitter about Wrath of Cortex, and the overall feeling was meh. A lot of people said it was okay, but it had a lot of problems. Of course, there were some that absolutely loved it, and some who absolutely loathed it. But the overall cumulative feelings towards the game was not great. And that was the last Crash game that tried to follow the original formula that was set in the original trilogy. You see, my worries lie in a stalemate between designers and customers because of nostalgia. A lot of people want a new product, but for it to also feel like the original. With some games, it's possible because the formula of the original game is expandable and can grow, while Crash's formula at the moment feels quite dated and may not be able to expand enough to be able to feel fresh to its players, meaning that we can likely expect changes to its core formula for the assumed Vicarious Visions entry to the franchise. But I am hoping that Crash fans, myself included, can take off our nostalgia goggles and be able to appropriately look at a new Crash game and judge for ourselves. Because here's the thing, these new entries into this franchise is not going to be the original Crash trilogy, and in order for a franchise to do well, it has to grow. If the game becomes stale, it will shrink back into irrelevancy, except for its once-in-a-while nostalgic comeback. I don't want Crash to be bound to the nostalgia trend, and to be able to leave its own mark in history as a comeback, and to dominate the markets once again for a long period of time, and not just be its simple nostalgic throwback. In short, we need to be able to accept change and not see it as something bad all the time, and we need to be able to expect change. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching. Cue the extra.